The most powerful man in Babylon was a slave. He had no money, no connections, no family, no freedom. Everything the world says you need to succeed, Daniel had none of it. And yet, 3 kings bowed to his wisdom. An entire empire ran through his hands. And when they threw him to the lions didn't move. What Daniel had wasn't luck. It wasn't talent. It was 3 daily habits so precise, so disciplined, so anchored in God, that no empire, no enemy, no lion could break what God had built in him. And those 3 habits are sitting in your Bible right now. Unchanged. Waiting. Before we go any further, you need to feel the weight of where Daniel was standing. Because most people read Daniel like a fairy tale. A brave young man in a lion's den. A Sunday school story with a happy ending. But strip away the stained glass and look at what actually happened to this man. Daniel was approximately 14 years old when Babylon came. Nebuchadnezzar didn't send an invitation. He sent an army. Jerusalem was surrounded, the temple was ransacked, and the finest young men of Israel, the strongest, the most intelligent, the most promising, were taken by force. Not as guests. As property. He was taken because he was exceptional. And then everything that made him who he was, his home, his family, his language, his God, his very name. Babylon had a system designed to erase all of it. They changed his name from Daniel, which means God is my judge, to Belteshazzar, which invokes the name of a Babylonian god. They enrolled him in a 3-year program of Babylonian literature and language. They assigned him the king's food and the king's wine. Every detail was engineered. This was not random cruelty. This was a sophisticated program of identity destruction. Babylon knew that if you control what a man eats, what language he thinks in, and what name he answers to, you control the man. And it worked. On almost everyone. But not Daniel. And the reason it didn't work on Daniel is not because Daniel was superhuman. It is because Daniel had already decided, long before the lions, long before the fire, long before the king's decree, who he was, who his God was, and what he would and would not do. Every single day. Without exception. This is the part nobody preaches. We celebrate Daniel's miracles. We skip Daniel's mornings. The first habit. He decided what he would not consume before the empire decided what he would. Daniel 1 verse 8. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. The Hebrew word translated resolved is sum. It means to set, to place, to establish. Daniel didn't feel inspired one morning. He didn't pray about it and see how he felt. He set a line. He placed a boundary. He established a standard before the pressure came. And this is the discipline most believers never develop. You wait until you're standing at the table to decide what you'll eat. You wait until you're in the room to decide what you'll say. You wait until the temptation is directly in front of you to decide what kind of person you are. And by then, it's already too late. Because the empire is very good at what it does. Babylon's food was first offered to idols. To eat it was to participate in worship, not of Yahweh, but of the gods of the empire that owned you. What you consume shapes what you become. Not just physically. Spiritually. Intellectually. The information you absorb, the voices you allow into your mind, the content you feed your eyes and your hours, all of it is either building a Daniel or building a Babylonian. There is no neutral consumption. Now stop. Look at your phone. Look at what you watched last night. Look at what you listened to this morning. Look at the voices you have been allowing into the most private rooms of your mind. That is Babylon's food. And you have been eating it without asking what it was offered to first. Daniel studied Babylon without becoming Babylon. He learned the language without losing his own. He sat in their classrooms without surrendering his mind. And at the end of 3 years, Daniel 1:20 says he was found to be 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in the entire kingdom. 10 times. Not slightly ahead. Not competitive. 10 times. That is the return on a habit of guarded consumption, sustained daily, without exception, for 3 years. You want to know why you are not 10 times better in your field, your craft, your calling? The empire has been feeding you its food for years. And you have been eating it without question. The second habit. He prayed 3 times a day, toward Jerusalem, with his windows open. Daniel 6 verse 10. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Read that last phrase again. Just as he had done before. This was not a crisis response. This was the continuation of a habit so established, so unshakable, so woven into the fabric of his daily life, that even a decree punishable by death could not interrupt it. The men who accused Daniel knew this. Daniel 6 verse 5. They said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God." His enemies studied him for weeks. They looked for weakness, compromise, inconsistency, and found nothing. The only vulnerability they could identify was his prayer life. Now let that hit you. His enemies couldn't find a single crack. Not in his work. Not in his character. Not in his finances. Not in his relationships. The only thing they could use against him was the most consistent, most visible, most unbreakable thing in his life, his daily conversation with God. When was the last time your faith was that visible? When was the last time someone who wanted to destroy you had to admit? The only way to get to him is through his God. Most believers pray when things fall apart. Daniel prayed when a law said the lions were waiting if he did. Because a habit that only survives comfort is not a habit. It is a preference. And preferences collapse under pressure. Habits do not. The lions did not move. Daniel 6 verse 22. My God sent his angel and he shut the mouths of the lions. The miracle was not random. The miracle was the conclusion of a habit built over decades. Prayer by prayer, morning by morning, window open, knees down, face toward Jerusalem. God did not show up for Daniel in that den because Daniel was lucky. God showed up because Daniel had been showing up. Every single day. Long before anyone was watching. The third habit. He pursued excellence in his work as an act of worship. Daniel 6 verse 3. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. Exceptional qualities. This is the same man who had been taken as a slave. The same man whose God was supposedly defeated when Jerusalem fell. The same man whose identity Babylon had spent years trying to erase. And yet Daniel distinguished himself. Not just survived. Not just endured. Distinguished. Here is what most Christians have entirely missed. You have separated Sunday from Monday. You pray on Sunday and clock in on Monday like they are 2 different lives lived by 2 different people. Daniel had one life. His prayer was his work and his work was his prayer. Every report written with precision. Every counsel given with integrity. Every task executed with the full weight of a man who understood that his real employer was not the king sitting on the throne. And here is what that produced. 3 different kings, Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, Darius, all turned to the same Hebrew slave when the empire needed answers. And eventually, every empire he served had to admit what it could not explain. Daniel 5 verse 11. The spirit of the holy gods is in this man. They didn't say he was talented. They didn't say he was educated. They said something was in him that didn't belong to Babylon. That is what excellence as worship produces. Not a reputation. A testimony. Not a promotion. A declaration from your enemies that the God you serve is real. Now ask yourself this. When people watch you work, your colleagues, your boss, the people who do not share your faith, what do they see? Do they see someone going through the motions? Or do they see something in you that they cannot explain and cannot ignore? Because that is the standard. Not perfection. Not performance. The Spirit of the living God made visible through the quality of your ordinary work. 3 habits. Guarded consumption. Disciplined prayer. Excellence as worship. Not performed on special days. Not reserved for crisis moments. Daily. Consistently. 4 decades. Through 4 empires, 3 lion dens worth of threats, and 1 night that should have ended everything. You are not waiting for Babylon to end before you become Daniel. You are in Babylon right now. The environment that is trying to name you, feed you, shape you, and make you forget who your God is, that is your workplace, your city, your social media feed, your financial pressure, your cultural moment. And Babylon is asking you the same question it asked that 14-year-old boy from Jerusalem. Will you eat what we give you? Will you stop praying when the cost gets high? Will you do just enough to survive? Daniel's answer was built long before the question was asked. Habit by habit. Morning by morning. Window open. Knees down. Work done with everything he had. The lions are not the test. The lions are the result. The test is every ordinary morning before anyone is watching, when you decide, quietly, without applause, what kind of man you are going to be today. Daniel decided. 3 times a day. Every day. For the rest of his life. And the most powerful empire on earth could not touch what God had built in him. Start tonight. 1 window open. 2 knees down. 3 times tomorrow. That is where it begins. Bible passage.